Oh, hi there. How are you all tonight? Very lovely to be with you on this Thursday night. I don't know about you, but I've been a bit screwed up today. I told someone today in a conversation, oh, we'll catch up on Friday, shall we? And they went, what, tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, Easter week. Easter week has done that to us, hasn't it? I wonder if you're the same. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. Chewy is out doing work commitment things tonight. I don't think we'll see him. I'm sure if Chewy pops up at the right time, he might stick his head in. But in general, I think it's just going to be you and me. And because I haven't had the chance to do this with anybody yet, I'm just going to play a little clip for you as we set the scene, primarily because I haven't played it for a while. And, you know, I do believe in taking responsibility for your actions, but secondarily is to test my audio for you so you can hear what's going on. Because you know what Mr. Luxon always says.
The third thing I'd say to you is we just clearly haven't got the appropriate consequences in place for serious offending, like we're seeing here as well. There has to be consequences, youth offending consequences. We know where the consequences of this actually is for them for the rest of their life. You know, really, it's about making sure we've got appropriate consequences. No consequences. We have to have consequences.
We do.
Consequences as a result. Consequences of crime. Consequences.
Clear set of consequences.
Consequences, and that's what we're saying here, to just enforce some consequences and actually make sure you know where your young person is and that you're actually getting them to school.
So, thank you, JK. Just checking everybody that we can hear what we can hear. I'm sorry to do it that way, but if I don't have a chance to test it beforehand, then I want to make sure it's working for you. So, lovely to be with you. The other thing I would like to invite you to do is, because it's just me tonight, I thought that I might fire up Discord. So if you're not sure about Discord, if you're not a user of Discord, Discord is an online platform where we can connect, like making a telephone call. So here's our Discord, BHN. You can find us very, very easily. And you can come and join up here. Like, these people are on live right now on our Discord, and there's a bunch of people who aren't on live at the moment. And if you want to come and have a chat, when I say a chat, I mean like a we can talk to each other, like a telephone call coming in, if you haven't used this before. I know I'm sounding like a boomer trying to explain that tactic things that people do. But what you can do is you can drag yourself a little thing, come down here and sit in the waiting room. And then what I can do is I can go into the live call in just like that, which I'm in right now. And so if you're on Discord right now, you can probably now hear the content from the show. And if you want to join in tonight through the show, now we haven't done Discord for a long, long time, but it's still operating, it's still active. Friend of the show, Planner Walk, jumped on with me this afternoon to make sure that it's all working. And you can come and jump into the waiting room, which is right there if you're watching, and you can wait there with any comments that you want to share about tonight's show. Or I thought, you know, it's been a really busy little bit of a time, actually, hasn't it? This week's been very, very busy. And if you want to come along and actually have a chat about anything, you're more than welcome to jump in, share your views on Discord, and happy to take your calls, something like that. I have sent the link out. The link is, if you're watching on YouTube, the link is in the description of the YouTube channel. If you're not watching on YouTube, then if you just go have a look on Twitter at Pat Brittenden, I sent the link out on Twitter a half hour ago or so. Yeah, thanks. Yep, thanks. We got that right. A voice chat. Yes, that's what we mean. A voice chat. Right? Like doing the talk tick. My friends, like doing the talk tick. And if you jump in and you want to have a chat, we can have a chat about what's going on tonight, or anything that's been going on in the show and in the news in general. Happy to take your thoughts. You can be the co-host tonight. Me and you. Seeing Chewy skiving off and going and having a bit of fun with people tonight. Cha. So anyway, there you go. I've mentioned it a few times during the night. And when we do Discord, we don't get a lot of people who jump on board, but you're more than welcome to jump in there if you want to have a crack. Good evening to everybody. Hi to everybody. I'm looking forward to more pearls of wisdom from you tonight, David. Oh, there you go, David. Some fans in the chat as well. Good evening, everybody. Vicky says, hiya, kia ora. So you're already talking about the clip that I played. So many consequences, except for Uffendale. Yes, and yes, I apologise, Ray, when I did play it for a little bit too long, but the good thing is now we know it's actually going. Right. What shall we talk about tonight? There are so many consequences. I mean, things to talk about. I don't know if you, I think most people who probably join our show know where we sit politically. And if you know where we sit politically, you're probably aware of some other groups out there like David Packman and Sam Cedar and TYT, the Young Turks. Ana Kasparian from the Young Turks is kind of creating waves around the internet at the moment for a couple of things that have happened in the last month or so. And I don't think it's funny, but it is particularly interesting when someone who has been a bastion of the left for so long starts using right-wing talking points. Now, I don't know whether it's fair or not to say it as bluntly as that, but I watched a clip of Anna today, and I'm going to play it tonight. And those of you who have watched us for this, we've done about 250 episodes of this now, I think. I think we've done 250 episodes. So we've been going for a good length of time. Those of us who have been watching for a while understand this when I say this from our experiences about sort of the left doing stuff that is completely stereotypical of what the right says the left does. Now, an example of this, now, make this clear. I'm not even saying this is a judgment on people doing this, yeah? But you could argue that happened a little bit at the Posey Parker situation, right? That some people, I don't want to say the left, because only a few people, but some people there gave the right-wing talking points exactly what they wanted to quote-unquote confirm their right-wing talking points. And I don't know if you've been following it. I have been, because it's been coming up in my feeds. You know, Posey Parker has made bank off Auckland and had a huge amount of exposure and had a huge amount of subsequent followers from it. Now, again, I'm not making commentary on what's the right or wrong thing to do in that situation. I'm not saying if people feel like they're being displaced or if people feel like they're being eradicated or erased, that they shouldn't respond in whatever means. But what I'm saying is the left seems to want to eat its own, but the left seems to also give the right, I guess the right does do this as well, but seems to give the right fodder for actually going, see, we told you so. And Anna's kind of done that a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. I guess we'll keep going. We'll start with this one. I was a big fan of the Young Turks probably in the middle of last decade. I think they were at their heyday probably when Obama was in and before Trump came in. Since then, of course, if people who know what I'm talking about, they've taken, $20 million investment from some Hollywood type people, and it's changed slightly. But the thing is, we change as well. So it's interesting watching all those new left-wing commentators coming up in America, kind of looking to TYT. It's a little bit like the third wave feminists look at the second wave feminists and go, TERFs, It's like the young left-wing YouTubers are looking at TYT and going, boomers. I don't know whether it is that they've changed or whether they've just aged. There is that old adage. Now, I don't actually buy into this adage, but there is that old adage that if you're not liberal when you are young, you've got no heart. And if you're not conservative when you're old, you've got no brain. I disagree with that, by the way. I think what the truth of that saying is the generations that come after us are more progressive. So it feels like for the next generation that the previous generation is more conservative. So like those of us who are firmly on the left, but I'm Gen X, Gen Y looks at me and probably goes, man, you're not very liberal. And then the Zoomers, the Gen Z, they look at me and go, oh, boomer, because their political ideologies, their worldviews are far more progressive than mine were. That doesn't mean I disagree with them or that I'm in a battle with them, but they see it like that. So rather than saying you are progressive when you're young and you're conservative when you're old, I think what it is the younger you get, the next generation gets more progressive. So it looks like the previous generation is more conservative. Now, the Young Turks, Cenk would be in his 50s, certainly. And Anna's probably in her 40s, I'm guessing, I don't know. And so have they changed? Are they changing? Is she changing? Or are her perspectives just aging with her? The other thing is when you get money, your perspectives can change. I remember, I'm a huge basketball fan, played it for 20 years, follow it still. There's a basketball player from the 80s and 90s called Charles Barkley, the round mound of rebound. Fairly controversial figure in his era. And he was talking about voting for Obama. And he tells a story about talking to his mother. And his mother was saying to him of voting for the right, voting for Republicans. His mother went to Charles, who's a former NBA player, now a commentator, but only those rich people vote for Republicans. And Charles like, Mom, I'm one of those rich people. So he had to come to a place outside of his natural falling for money to realize actually he was going to go with the left from then on in. So, but the natural progression when you get money is to want to keep that money and to go towards the right, who tend to look after those with wealth, whereas the left tend to look after those without better, right? So I guess without having commentary on Ana as to where she is today, I'm going to, I guess, leave it at that and just drop into the conversation. And the conversation is based around, ironically, one of the things that the left is most passionate about, which is climate change via electrical vehicles, like finding solutions for climate change. Now, Ana Kasparian, they have things in America called Homeowners Association. And actually, if you're a fan of Last Week Tonight, John Oliver just did a big piece on this in the latest episode. And so homeowners associations are like private entities that are within a group of houses, like a gated community would be, I guess, as close as we would think about it, although they don't have to be gated. And in that gated community, the actual houses can pay a fee to the homeowners association, which belongs to them, to build roads and keep up with curbs and do the trash collecting and that kind of stuff as well. So Ana's homeowners association wants to put in a whole bunch of charging stations for electric cars, and that's going to cost. That's the background to the story. Electric car charging stations, and that's going to cost. And this is Ana's, and I'll pretty much just play all of this. This is Ana's reaction to obviously this cost coming from the homeowners association that's going to be spread over all the homeowners to bring charging stations into their neighborhood. Let's have a listen.
The way that it happens is, I know that in California, at least, with the phasing out of gas-powered cars, and they'll probably do the same thing with gas stoves, is they just ban the sale of any new gas-powered cars or any new gas stoves. And so the technology that you have in your home, the gas stove that you have in your home, if it breaks, not only are you not able to buy a new one, but it gets increasingly more difficult to just repair it. You get what I'm saying? And so, like,
I get it, but that's a bump. That's the normal bumps in the road as you transition to things.
So Ana's like, and look, they're okay concerns to have. Like, if they're going to stop selling gas, stop servicing gas. When she says gas for stoves, I'm assuming she means like LPG gas, because they also refer to petrol as gas. And that if they don't allow LPG, natural gas to go into houses anymore, if they're phasing that out, then it becomes obsolete technology. That means no one services. I get it, but Jenk's point straight away is, but this is what happens when we're moving forward. Things become obsolete and we have to move on even if there's a cost to it.
I know, but Jenk, don't minimize the financial burdens associated with these things, okay?
No, I'm not.
Because I am literally freaking the fuck out about the charging station thing. I'm like, it's gonna cost, we're gonna take out a massive fucking loan to pay for it. We're not getting any help from the fucking government on that.
Did you guys ask, is there any tax credits? But seriously. Seriously, there's no government help at all to transition you guys?
I don't give a fuck about tax credits.
No, I'm saying for the HOA.
There's been no talk of tax credits.
Let me say as well, if you watch TYT, they come up on my YouTube feed quite a lot. This is the members only. It's very bizarre to watch Ana swearing her head off, because when they broadcast non-members stuff, they don't swear at all because it's going to YouTube and they've got deals with other platforms that they don't do it. And this is the members only. This is behind the paywall. And I'm not saying it's grating. It's just really interesting to watch Ana speaking actually as she would perhaps normally speak.
I haven't seen anything about tax credits. I should look into it. Maybe there are tax credits, but I don't give a fuck about tax credits because you have to shell out cash. Okay, I want to do something in response to climate change. That is not my issue here. My issue is how, like, we're forced to make all these changes that are a financial burden, a giant inconvenience, with like little to no help. And the solution from the government in terms of like, no, you get financial benefits for doing this is fucking tax credits. No, I don't want the tax credits. Give me the money. Give me the money.
Now, I mean, I'd be interested to get your thoughts in the chat. You know, it seems like the position of the left generally is we need to move forward, and if we're going to go into this electrical world, there are going to be costs to it. Now, maybe Anna's having a bad day. Maybe she's got bad news before they went live to air. Maybe, I don't know, something. Maybe she just had a massive bill come in. Maybe she's got a leaky house and there's a massive bill and it's just the last thing on top. But this is a part of it. No one says it's easy, and no one says it's, you know, to get an electric vehicle and those costs are going to be. But it just doesn't feel like the kind of thing that a progressive / person on the left would be complaining about if it's what their ideology truly was. Yes, there's going to be costs. Yes, you're going to have to figure it out.
Okay? Don't tell me this bullshit about how I have to buy like some new fucking thing because the government's forcing me to do it. And then like after I file my taxes, there's a certain portion of that purchase that might be tax deductible. Like, fuck off. I'm so sick of it. It's just like endless pressure. I can't take it.
Yeah, I hear you. And we ask too much of the middle class. We ask too much of the average person.
Oh, the middle class is the most fucked group of people in this country.
No, I hear you on all that. But
I wonder, if you were talking to Bernie Sanders, I wonder if he would actually agree that the middle class is the most fucked group in the country, or he'd be more talking about, you know, the vulnerable, the low income, the entry level, the service workers. That's what I'm saying. It just doesn't feel. I mean, our Christopher Luxon has been talking about what's one of those quotes? The squeezed middle. I'm not saying that the left ignore the middle class or the working middle class, but it doesn't feel like these. If you didn't know who this was and you just heard this, you wouldn't think this is coming from someone who identifies as a significant progressive.
But at some point, we got to go to electric cars. We don't have a choice. Like the plant's burning, so we got to go to electric cars. So when California says, hey, let's go to electric cars by whatever the number is, 2025, et cetera. Yeah, it's going to be tough. But at the same time, now prices are coming down, right?
Okay, but Cenk, let's not minimize the cost of like actually charging those cars, right? Because here's the other thing. So Gavin Newsom pushes.
So just think about this. One of the right-wing talking points, right, like a literal right-wing talking point, is how is the grid going to handle all these EVs? What a waste of money. Yet we've got all this resource with oil in the ground. The power grids are going to fall over. It's literally the talking point that comes out now.
For and succeeds in passing legislation in California that would ban the sale of electric cars at a certain year. I think it is 2025, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not, maybe it's 2035. I don't remember the exact year, but eventually, pretty soon, you're no longer going to be able to buy a gas-powered car in California. Literally like that same month, Gavin Newsom's like, there's a heat wave and our energy grid really can't handle it. And so I'm just gonna ask you guys, if you have electric vehicles, please don't charge them right now. It's just.
No, you can't do that.
So there you go, that's the video. And the reason I think this is interesting to talk about how the right is responding is, so this is the original video. Ana Kasparian changed her position on women erasing language because she referred to herself a few months ago. She said, don't call me a womb haver. I can't remember, a birthing person. She said, you know, I'm a woman. So she started using that verbiage. But has also realized that the Green New Deal initiatives are absurd after her condo board decided to go into significant debt just to pay for charging stations for all the cars. Hilarious. And then, if you can see my screen, these are the raft of things I'm going to show you. What I'm saying about giving fodder to the right. This is the sound of leftism meeting reality. Neocon stage 2, mugged by reality. Light bulb on. Must watch, says a group called Right Scoop. Leftist TYT news host absolutely loses it over Californians' expensive climate change agenda. And finally, the post-millennial says Ana Kasparian changes her views about the Green New Deal initiatives after her building board goes into debt trying to pay for charging stations for electric cars. Quote, if you have electric vehicles, please don't charge them right now, which is what Gavin Newsom said. Now, I'm just really quite interested in this perception that we put out there, that the left puts out there, and this is just feeding into everything that the right says. Again, I guess I want to be careful. I'm not holding Anna, like so utterly responsible for it, like no one else has got a part to play in this. However, this is a smart broadcaster. She's a lecturer in journalism at a local university, and I guess it's Los Angeles as well. And I don't know, I just feel sometimes that we've said this before, the left eats itself and the left seems to give to the right exactly what they want to continue the right narratives. And some of that she's actually using the right-wing talking points. The grid's not going to be able to handle it. I'm like, well, so you need to progress. You need to progress, progressive, and you need to sort out all those problems along the way. People have been talking about this as we've been going in. Freestyle says she has a potty mouth on members only, LOL. Vicky says, interesting, I don't watch members only stuff, but I was a bit surprised to hear swearing like a trooper. Mr. Anderson, she's dirty on the spend. Yep, absolutely. And that's some of the things that I'm saying that the right often says. How are you going to pay for it? Okay, lefties who want to give everything away, how are you going to pay for it? And then you've got Ana Kasparian saying, how are we going to pay for it? That's what I'm saying. It's that they've reinforced the right trope. And I don't know whether it's because she had a bad day, she's getting older and she's got more money and so she's evolving her political views. I'm not sure, but it's a very interesting perspective to be coming from there. Free Soul also says they criticise the leftists as much as the right often. Peter says even less of a flan now. I like the swearing though. Also I shout out for an EV and a charger. Can I swear it up as well, Pat? You can say whatever you want on the show. In fact, I'm just looking again. If you're wanting to join us in Discord, you're welcome to join us and head into the waiting room, and I'll pull you across at the end of each story. If you want to have a chat about this particular story, you're more than welcome. If you're just joining us, the link to the Discord is in the description on YouTube. Mark says, yeah, unlike her, I'm surprised by that. Probably having a bad day. Yeah, look, I guess that's fair. And Vicky brought up that whole thing. Oh, she's from the squeezed middle. No, Bernie would not agree with this woman. So yeah, and I'm no one saying Bernie is, oh gosh, there's tons of messages in there as well. Sorry guys, without a co-host here tonight, I'm going to be not as available to get all the chats. I'll have to scan them as we're talking because there is a lot going on, and I'm here all by myself. Cheryl says she comes across as a spoiled brat, and yes, I'm a boomer. Look, let me just say as well, I did see a few texts going past saying, oh, I disagree with that whole thing about more conservative. I'm just talking about in general. Obviously, your anecdotal evidence may not be representative of the overall data. You might be the most progressive 60-year-old in the world or 50-year-old in the world. And yes, there are conservative 20-year-olds. But in general, I think that the younger people are, in general, there are more progressive 20 to, or let's say 18 to 25-year-olds than there are 73 to 80-year-olds. I think that's a fair, even though I don't have the data in front of me, but I think that's a fair thing to say. Gosh, it's so funny when I've got Discord open because in the back of my brain, you know, you have muscle memory. The back of my brain, I nearly said, you can give us a call on 0800, and I was about to say the name of one of the radio stations I used to work for. Like that went from here to here because I'm looking at Discord going, we could talk about this. You can give us a call. It's 0800, and I'm like, that's not how this works anymore. But it's just a muscle memory, isn't it? It's just muscle memory. Mark says, I'm getting older, have more money, haven't changed my views. I bought an EV. Yeah, and look, okay, let's not shit too much on Ana Kasparian because, you know, I don't find TYT to be my source of brilliant commentary. I still watch them though. I watch clips when they come up, and it's always that thing to be gracious. We need to, but I would say to you, if you're going to be gracious to Anna on these comments, then you need to be gracious to the opposing person who might seem a more moderate right winger. And then when that right winger goes to a far right statement, you got to give them the same grace. That's the only thing I would say. Right. Sorry. Was just hearing from a politician who was going to come on the show and is now not available. That's why I did not tease it. All right. Speaking of politicians, let's get into the next thing. Oh, that's interesting. Here's one as well I think it's from Vicky, isn't it? My mum told me before she died that the older she gets, the more liberal she has become. Shame she was a conservative for most of her life. Ah, nice. Well, hang on, not nice that someone passed away. And look, speaking of passing away, I don't know if you've seen or if you know. If you haven't, go onto Facebook and have a look up Jason Gunn. I think it might have been a week or so ago, but for some reason, Jason Gunn's video, and if you're from outside New Zealand, Jason Gunn is kind of a beloved TV personality in New Zealand. Many of us, maybe, me certainly, kind of grew up with Jason doing after-school television and sort of family entertainment in the evenings. He shared a very moving story about his mum passed away like a couple of weeks ago. And so Jason's not watching, but, you know, thoughts and prayers. Is that what we say? Heartfelt wishes to Jace. I know what it's like to lose your mum. It's a hard time, and so it seems to be impacting him very heavily. So there you go, Jason. Jason Gunn, beautiful New Zealander, and it sounds like from the tribute he gave, had a beautiful mum as well. All right, team, we're going to have a look at something else, because one of the titles for tonight is, has Christopher Luxon ruled out Te Pati Maori as a coalition partner? It's a really interesting situation they're in. Now, we've been saying on this show that Te Pati Māori could never work in a government with ACT, and how ACT and David Seymour has talked about Rawiri and others. I just don't see, like, Māori people, not again to stereotype, but Māori people have a huge amount of mana and pride, and in their leaders, right? They have a lot of pride in their leaders. If you're just a not leader in the Māori, so younger Māori in their older generation. And I would imagine after some of the things that David Seymour has said, like we've played videos here of him basically telling New Zealand not to trust Rawiri, one of the co-leaders of Te Pati Māori. I couldn't imagine that the Māori community would be then happy for Rawiri or Debbie to sign off on with a government involving ACT. However, stranger bedfellows there may have been. We saw the Māori Party go with National in the past, and you never really know. So in saying that, it's interesting to see that there is a story that's come out. Now, the comment by Christopher Luxon, I haven't found anywhere. So I saw this story today and I read it, and then I went to try and source the item that Christopher Luxon actually said, what he's claimed to have said. Now, there is another article which says he had said it, but he was speaking to a group of 50 farmers or something. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's no video or audio of it anywhere. So I'm not sure whether that means we have to not take it with a grain of salt, meaning he didn't say it. But, you know, context is everything. And I'm not saying that to give him a pass, but it's one of those things. If you've been watching my Chantal Baker clips this week, you'll know that I am pretty keen to hear and see evidence. Now, I'm not saying he didn't say it. In fact, it's pretty clear he did say it, but it will be interesting to delve into what he meant by that. Because the story that comes out today was from Debbie Ngarewa told Stuff that we've always been open about being pro-Māori. Ngarewa responds to Luxon's two separate systems claims. So Christopher Luxon was speaking to a group of about 50 at a dairy farm north of Morrinsville on Tuesday, and he said to them that the National Party would not win the election by working with Te Pati Māori because it was highly unlikely it could cooperate with a party that believes in, quote, two separate systems. On Sunday, a newly released political poll, which we're going to look at as well actually, suggested Te Pati Māori holds the balance of power and could decide the next government if the election were held today. Look, and we don't, in this show, we don't take any validity in that whatsoever. A poll is just about what people are thinking today, and we don't look at that at all. And I think people are silly to chase the idea of this group's going to have the balance of power, because at the moment, under these poll results, I think National and ACT are only maybe 2 seats away from governing alone. So it's just, we will look at what would happen today, but we won't necessarily, even though we might say it, but we're not taking any importance into the projections, because 6 months from now is not the results that they're going to get today. Luxon at Tuesday's gathering appeared to distance National from any real possibility of teaming up with Te Pati Maori post-election, something a spokesperson for its office later walked back somewhat. Asked during a Q&A session at the dairy farm, are you going to be able to win this election by working with the Māori Party? Luxon replied, the short answer is no. According to Stuff, Luxon said the current leadership of Te Pati Māori had changed too much since Sir Peter Sharples and Dame Tariana Turia, who held ministerial roles in Sir John Key's government. The party that Key did a deal with back in 2008 was a party that believed in what we call localism and devolution. This is a party that now believes in two separate systems. That is something we cannot support. So has he ruled them out? Well, he said no, and he said highly unlikely. In the actual Stuff article, a spokesperson right here, so this is actually someone then cleaning up the commentary, a spokesperson for Luxon later said that he hadn't intended to fully rule out working with the Greens or Te Pati Māori, but wanted to make it clear that forming a coalition with either party was highly unlikely. Well, it's never going to happen with the Greens. So, whether he chooses to rule them out or not, that's never going to happen. And then he says this, the spokesperson says, it is highly unlikely National would work with Te Pati Māori. National is working hard to maximise its votes in the upcoming election, they said. That's the spokesperson. So is that a good thing, I guess, for the left or not? The only poll that matters is actually election day. We all know that. It's almost a tropian saying itself, but it would be appropriate as now to actually see where the polls are sitting. Remember, we're not necessarily going to put a lot of credence in the projections, but we are going to have a look at what the numbers are, even if they say this is where the seats would be, because that kind of means nothing. So Taxpayers Union Courier poll, why did I say Courier? Courier poll, April 2023. So this was from the weekend just gone. You can see that basically at the end, National and Labour are neck and neck. Technically, Labour has gone up 1.4 to 36.9. National has gone up 1.7 to 36.5. So absolutely neck and neck, nothing in it whatsoever. The ACT Party has gone basically stable on 9.5. The Greens are on 6.7. And Te Pati Māori is 2.9, and obviously we expect them to win some of their seats. It'll be interesting to see whether the Labour Party challenge them in those Māori seats or not. But yeah, we'll see. New Zealand First on 2.6 and Other on 4.8. Labour holds its marginal lead as it raises to 1.4 on last month's poll, while National is up 1.7, yada, yada, yada. ACT rises by 0.2, the Greens are up 1. So the Greens have actually had a pretty good increase compared to ACT. But still, the big difference you're seeing now is actually ACT and Green are the ones that are making it more difficult. The Greens are making it more difficult for Labour to think about a two-party beast. Smaller parties were Māori Party 2.9, NZ First on 2.6, New Conservatives on 1.7, Democracy New Zealand on 1.6, and Top on 0.8. It's fascinating that Democracy New Zealand is ahead of Top, actually, but there you go. Now, these are the seats in the House. Now, I'm not really interested in those, other than what this does give us is the true and accurate representation of what the percentages would be. And remember, you need 61 seats to govern, and you can see that National and ACT would get to 59, and who are they? Labour and the Greens would get to 57. So proportionally, they're both under 50. So that's good to know. The other thing that's still going on, don't care about the number of seats, is that the net favourability by current party poll. 52 points of voters have a favourable view of Hipkins, which is, 52%. That means obviously so many more than just Labour Party people. 52% of voters have a favourable view of Hipkins, whilst 24% have an unfavourable view. So it's a net favourability of plus 28, which is down 5 points from the last time. However, Christopher Luxon and David Seymour are on -4, whereas Hipkins is on plus 28, and -6. Finance Minister Grant Robertson has a net favourability of -8, while Environment Minister David Parker has a net favourability of -21. So the Courier poll is very traditionally a right-leaning poll. I'm not saying there's anything untoward, but it's a right-leaning poll. So you would expect this from the left-wing ministers, which also then just goes to show that a net favourability of the Prime Minister of plus 28 is pretty impressive. It also made me think today that perhaps, we talk about democracy and we talk about the biggest parties. Could you make the argument that if Christopher Luxon is on -4 favourability, he shouldn't be Prime Minister? Do you know what I'm saying? He shouldn't be Prime Minister. Just a thought. Because I'm not saying this is going to happen in these ways, but you imagine if the leader of a party had a 0% favourability as Prime Minister, like in other words, and then the leader of the party that lost had a 30% favourability. How's that also democratically fair? That the country is voting in a party but giving them the worst option to lead that party. I guess it is democratically fair, but how's that smart, perhaps? We'll go on. It says Chris Hipkins is also now has a negative net favourability rating with national voters of down 5, which is -5, which is down 18 points from plus 13 last month. Among undecided voters, Chris Hipkins has a slight positive net favourability of +1, down 35 points on last month. Christopher Luxon is on -15, while David Seymour is on 0. So the undecideds don't mind David Seymour, but they pretty much hate Christopher Luxon. I do notice as well that, and I'm trying to work it out, it's a bit hard to actually figure out because these are all the pluses and minuses, that they don't give the numbers for Luxon and Seymour. They just give their overall score of -4 and -6. I wonder why. I'm not sure about that. There might be nothing in it, but they're not the actual numbers. Like you can see, Hipkins is +52, -24. But for the two right-wing leaders, it just says -4, -6. It's also interesting to see, if you have a look at the votes up here, that Christopher Luxon, obviously a National Party leader, has a pretty good favourability amongst ACT Party supporters. But I thought it more interesting that there would be people who, from the National Party, the blue bar here, who look like they would rather have Seymour as a leader than their own, perhaps. This is also quite interesting. You can see that these same respondents were asked about which party do you support for the economy. They said National over Labour. For health, they said Labour over National. For leadership, which is interesting because remember, Christopher Luxon is absolutely selling his leadership, because you might not have heard this, but he used to be the CEO of Air New Zealand. I don't think that's come out yet. But so he's selling himself on his leadership. But these same voters have put leadership Labour over National. Inflation, National over Labour. Jobs, again, economy, jobs, Labour over National. And law and order, National over Labour, which is actually I find that to be a particularly interesting little snapshot. It's a particularly interesting little snapshot because I think they're probably pretty good places to think about for the upcoming election. The country, when I say the country, the voters want to see National because, and look, I disagree with the economy and inflation. Inflation is an external force, primarily international, but the way this poll has come out, the country wants to see National in for the economy, for inflation and for law and order, and they want to see Labour in for health, for leadership, and for jobs. So it's 3 apiece. It's an interesting dynamic. I find it particularly interesting. Happy to hear your thoughts on that via the chat, although as I've been saying, I'm sorry, but I'm not paying as much attention to it as I possibly could be because there is so much more. Let me have a look. I was just looking over the Discord. No one wants to come and chat with me in Discord. That's fine. We can leave that for tonight. Paul says the PM polls are more about trends because we don't vote for that role. We tend to vote for the party. Simon says, I remember when Judith Collins said it for the party leader. Remember when Judith Collins said it for the party leader was on below 35% and opinion poll should not be leader. Right. Judith Collins said if the opinion poll is less than 35%, that person shouldn't be the leader of the country. Or leader of the party, I guess. Time to Fly says, Luxon has zero charisma. Water cracker versus toffee pop. Toffee pop? Maybe ginger nut would be better. Maybe. someone who's a member of the Labour Party is going to challenge for every seat in this country. There were no deals. Yeah, I think, and I've said this for a long time as well. The left in general don't play politics as well as the right. The right are smarter, even though it might be a bit smugger and uglier in playing the game of politics. The left don't do it as well. There's no way. Like, for example, right now, the Greens, according to this poll, are on 6.7%. Remember, if they drop a couple of percent, they're not in government. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but they should absolutely do a deal with Chloe and help her win. They should absolutely do a deal with Efeso Collins in South Auckland and do a deal. 100%. And the reason they're not also very smart, and you can look at this it's not going to matter now because of where ACT is sitting. Labour and the left could have eliminated ACT from Parliament several times if they had have played the game properly and they had told all their constituents in Epsom to vote for National. Like, playing the game, like if they all had voted for Goldsmith before ACT was reliably getting over 5%, then he wouldn't have got in because Goldsmith would have still got more. So all the National voters are voting for ACT. And if all the Labour voters had voted for National in that, I'm not talking about for the party, but for the constituents, then David Seymour wouldn't have won that seat. It's too late now because they're on 10%. It doesn't matter whether he wins or not. But back in the day, the left didn't play that game very well. The right were having cups of teas and handshakes and that sort of thing, and they were getting a partner in with them. And the left were going like, we're going to do every seat. And they just weren't playing the game. Now, you might not like that. I'm cool with you not liking that. Of course I'm cool with you not liking that. But that's politics. Politics is a game, And if you're not going to play it, then if you don't play it as hard as you can and the other side do, then you're going to be left wanting from time to time. Might only be one seat. It might be two seats. It might be one MP. It might be three. If you're looking at the results from today, 3 MPs might make a huge difference. 2 MPs might make a huge difference. I've also heard, now I'm not sure about this, you can tell me this in the chat because you guys always correct me straight away, that Te Pati Maori is going to be challenging in every electric seat as well. I've heard that. I don't know if it's the case or not. I need to do some research, but we might look into that. I've got Debbie Narawapaka coming on to one of my Friday night shows in the next few weeks, so we'll go into some in-depth with her about that sort of thing as well. So yeah, it's an interesting time, and I think that the results are going to be interesting. And it feels to me like, I don't know. I was going to say that Luxon's ruled out Te Pati Maori. I think Luxon is speaking to his base because he doesn't want to be seen as pandering. Pardon me, but you understand that what I'm saying is like from one of those callers, one of those voters, pandering to the bloody Maoris. Whereas after the election, if he needs them to form a government, I think probably he'll get them in. What will be really interesting to see is if David Seymour would sign up on a 3-headed monster to get into Parliament if Te Pati Māori were involved. That's probably more interesting. All right, team. Let's have a look at probably the big news story of the day, and it is 3Waters by any other name. Here's the story off News Hub tonight. They do quite a good summary of it, including, this is one of the biggest things that this actually, if you watch, that I've always struggled with, and that's the idea that co-governance being such a cornerstone for so many people to complain about. Now, co-governance is representation on not the people running these entities, but the people appointing those to run the entities. So groups like Groundswell, probably ACT and National, other right-wing think tanks have done a very good job politically playing the game at muddying the waters, thinking that there's going to be unelected people on the board deciding where your water's going to go. It's never been the case. Never has been, still is not the case today. There has been an agreement that there would be mana whenua on the selection panel, which is basically what it is, a kind of governing, overarching group, which is also now going to made up of all the mayors, who will also who won't have any power when it comes to running the entity. But that hasn't changed. That's never been the case. But the waters have been muddied very well to make it seem like, there's going to be an unelected body deciding to turn the water off coming to your house. ludicrous as that sounds. All right, let's have a look at the story from News Hub tonight.
Tēnā tātou katoa, good
Tēnā
evening.
koutou katoa.
3Waters is no more. The government today unveiled what it's calling a major shake-up to its controversial water policy, and it'll now be called affordable water reforms. Ownership of water infrastructure will remain local, and councils have been given more of a voice at the table. A major change is the proposed 4 regional public water entities will be expanded to 10 across the country. But possibly the
It's basically the rugby groups now. You know, it's kind of like Super Rugby, or it's basically what they are. Nelson, Tasman, Canterbury through the middle. I know that's West Coast. Otago, Southland. So, you know, probably why all the colours are that as well. Mind you, Auckland should be blue if that was the case.
aspect that has caused the most consternation among some, co-governance, will remain as part of the policy, although the Prime Minister didn't want to admit it. Political editor Jenna Lynch has the details.
This little shipping container has a big job, getting water to Wairarapa. And the little machine inside has an enormous price tag, $5 million. But that's nothing compared to the eye-watering water infrastructure bill the entire country's facing.
Here's the guts of it, up to $180 billion.
Councils are on the hook for that, and they can't afford it. It's the problem that
I actually like him quite a lot. Here's the guts, lads and ladesses.
government's controversial 3Waters reforms were trying to solve, but they became so much of a problem themselves, they've had to be rebranded. Goodbye 3Waters, hello.
Affordable water reform.
The government wants to create new water entities to own and manage water infrastructure. That means the debt for that infrastructure will be taken off debt-ridden council books and handed over to the entities, which will start with a fresh page, good assets, and are therefore more attractive to lenders. The entity's large enough to borrow much more than councils can.
The country can't afford it. The councils say they don't want to do it by themselves.
Under the old proposal, there were just 4 entities. The government has increased it to 10 to include everyone.
Every mayor is guaranteed a seat at the table.
Our concerns still remain around community property rights and the loss of meaningful local decision making.
The trade-off, because the entities are much smaller now, they won't be able to essentially bulk buy as much infrastructure, so things get a bit more expensive than the 4-entity model.
So that's a really important point, yeah. And we've been talking about this, you and I, lovely people, since day one. And one of the things we've been saying is when all the mayors came out making their voices, you know, keep 3Waters, we're going to keep 3Waters, you know, we're going to keep it, you're not going to do it, we're going to keep it. None of them also went, and your rates are going to go up exponentially. Right? None of them gave the reality of what happens when you keep your 3Waters. So what's happened now is there's a payoff, right? So these entities are smaller, which means more local control. So Otago Southland, for example, Auckland Northland. However, ratepayers are going to be paying more. So what I don't want to hear is anybody who was not for 3Waters now complaining that they see over the next basically 30 years their rates going up. I think they give some numbers in this, and it's something like they're still going to go up by 5,000 by 2034 per year, but it would have been 8,000 or something. I think we have the numbers out here to find out. So personally for me, I would rather have less cost as a ratepayer and have a smaller entities. But for some reason, people think smaller entities costing more to the ratepayer is a better solution. I don't see that personally. I can't say that I'm right or wrong, but I would rather have it the other way around if I was voting for it.
Creating a guaranteed seat at a representative group table that has some influence for quite a significant increase in cost for my people, and that's what troubles me.
But the government says every ratepayer in every region will be better off than they are now. For instance, households in the Auckland and Northland regions are on average set to save $2,770 a year by 2054. That's at the lower end of the scale. Households in Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Otago and Southland on average save over $5,000.
The alternative is a significantly higher rates bill for New Zealanders.
This government has decided to change the name, change the website, but we're still stuck with 3Waters. It's a dumb policy. We're going to repeal it.
So here's the thing as well, yeah, and again, we've been saying this for a long time, and it frustrates me when people don't ask these questions. So, and I've been using Gore as the example because they're our neighbours. $300 million, something like $30,000 per ratepayer or $5,000 ratepayer over the next 30 years or whatever it is per year. It's like the National Party Act and others have been saying this for so long, but no one has yet said, how the fuck are you going to fix the pipes? A, it's not 3Waters. Things have changed, right? And B, is how are you going to fix the pipes? Are you just giving it back to the local agencies, national? Are you just saying, Gore, you got your $300 million, you sort it out? What are you going to do? Because at the moment, it's one of those instances where they're still just saying Labor bad, but they've given no answers as to what they would do and how they would do it.
Controversial co-governance bit still kind of exists on what's known as regional representative groups, the mayoral seats at the table. They'll be split 50-50 between council and mana whenua.
Let's be clear about this. It's not co-governance and it wasn't co-governance. These entities will be governed by a skills-based board.
So there's no requirement for Māori to be on those corporate-style boards which actually run the entities,
Right.
but the board is chosen by those 50-50 regional groups.
I'm not sure everybody recognises that Māori have a special interest in water that's been established through the courts.
The minister confident he's crushed the reset.
I think we've nailed it.
That, of course, is for the voters to decide.
Well, Jenna's with us now. Kia ora, Jenna. This policy has been dogging the government for years. Are these changes enough to take the heat out of it?
The damage has possibly already been done. People that hate 3Waters may not be won over by a rebrand. The government effectively lost the argument on affordable water by failing to say the words affordable water until now. That's led to this watering down of 3Waters, which actually means that ratepayers will end up paying more than under the prior proposals.
Correct.
But that was the trade-off for getting the mayors on board.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Who the fuck decided that trade-off? And this is what made me so frustrating about when I talked to Dunedin mayors coming up to the last election. They all talked about democracy this, democracy. None of them went out to the public and said, you have two options here. One is and I'm just going to use words that they would use. Let's not even debate now. One is we lose some control, but it costs us less, you, the ratepayer, less. Two is we keep all the control ourselves, but it costs you a lot more. That question was never asked of ratepayers, and that's the only question that really matters. And the only question that really should have been asked, because in the end, the people paying for it should be able to make the decision based on all of the information, based on the information around what the costings are. You know, this is like a business deal, but we've been given the pros and cons. But I'll tell you a story, right? A silly story. I remember having a house in Titarangi up in Auckland, and we got a back deck built, right? And it cost us $5,000 to get built. And the guy said to us, should we use softwood or hardwood? And we went, well, tell us about the costings. And the builder went, well, he was more of a DIY guy, but the builder went, hardwood will be much more expensive. And I went, okay, well, we'll use softwood. That's okay. It's pine. It's fine. And we used it. And then at the very end of it, my fault, and I learned a lesson from it. I said to him, out of interest, what would the hardwood have cost? And he went, about $500 more. And I was like, what? Now, in his mind, he determined it was a lot more. In my mind, I'm like, that's only 10% difference for hardwood. We would have gone with that if I had the information. Getting the information of costing is uber important, and we don't have any of that information, right? We didn't have any of that information from our mayors. I know wherever you are, we didn't have any of that information here in Dunedin as to what the costings would be either way. We just got told, we want to keep it, Labor bad, Nanaia Mahuta, co-governance. That was it. And to be honest, it feels like that's still the conversation going on.
From the government's perspective, they can still head out on the election campaign and trumpet some savings to households, which National cannot do, because their policy, repealing this, is very similar to the status quo, with an added order to councils to invest in infrastructure, but they haven't released any costings. They haven't told us how councils can foot that monumental bill, so Labor has every right to head out on the hustings and say to National, show me the money.
Political editor Jenna Lynch, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Jenna. Tēnā koe. Hang on, let me just
A group of New Zealand
shut this
grocery
down before it keeps going. There we go. Now, what I wanted to also do is there's quite an interesting article on One News. I want to get to this as well. I quite like that new layout. Maybe we'll just leave that new layout, shall we, folks? Because then it's like I'm reading it off that screen. The story on One News was how Kieran McNulty might have just saved 3Waters. And it's interesting because they talk about his language. And it was... I agree. Righto, kick it in the guts, Trev. You know, it feels less politicized when you've got, you know, Farmer Kieran in his red ute just telling us about it. TVNZ says this: notice that he spoke like a regular person. He got straight to the point. No Wellington speak here. Later, when he was asked if he was worried water reform would be a challenge in the election, McNulty said, I think we've nailed it. I don't know why I'm using that voice. Whether or not making one attempt that appeared to have failed miserably, disastrously even, and make a reattempt counts as nailing it, it's up for discussion, but they may have been splitting hairs. Yeah, and look, Stephanie, oh, I pushed the wrong one there. Vicky says, it is great for integration. Okay. Stephanie says, it's blokey. Now, that may be good, that may be bad, but again, I don't want to sound like a complete tosser, but in the game of politics, it's a marketing game. You know, it's how they sell themselves is important. I think we're going to go back to our other view because you guys can't even see that, can you? There we go. Right, so this story goes on to say, so they're the water entities. The measure of nailing it, as Kieran said, it will be in how much heat is now taken out of the debate around affordable water reform from this point on. McElnulty, sorry, I'm struggling with that name, seems confident more councils are on board this time round. Communities for Local Democracy, a group of about 30 councils leading the charge in opposition to the reform, said today it was the, quote, same plan with a different name, which it's not. So this is the stupid thing. This is why we need to talk through what the changes are. It's not the same plan. There are differences. So anyway, and didn't quote, answer concerns around community, property rights and meaningful local voice. Well, it does, because it says very clearly there are going to be a council, and the joint councils are going to start a separate entity, and the councils are going to own that separate entity, which owns the water. So unless they're saying that only Otago can own Otago and only, Nelson Bays can own Nelson Bays, but at the moment, that separate entity where I am is going to be owned by Otago and Southland. No, it's not going to be owned by Queenstown or Dunedin or Gore, but it's going to be owned by entity. If you're in Auckland, it's not going to be owned by, well, it's a super city now, isn't it? I was going to say Manukau or Waitakere, but that's all changed. It's not going to be owned by like the Far North or Northland or Auckland. It's going to be owned by all three, but that's local. It's owned locally. I think I heard as well, and I'm not sure whether this was on the article, I watched the press briefing, that Kieran McNulty said they originally were looking at maybe doing, he gave a number. I think he might have said 15 groups. He said, but the cost analysis was they wouldn't get the same savings if they had more entities. So they I guess quite pragmatically settled on 10. So they looked to make 15 entities. When they did that, they saw that they couldn't get the same savings. In other words, that's one of the big points. And so they settled on 10, which is more than 4 and less than 15, which maybe 15 was the ideal. A group press release from the mayors of Mackenzie, Timaru, Waimati echoed those sentiments, was about local voice. The National Party's local government spokesman Simon Watts says it was Labour's desperate attempt to rebrand its toxic 3Waters reforms and wouldn't fool New Zealanders nor fix water infrastructure, whilst the same party is not telling us a single thing about how they'd fix water structure. Kiwis want local assets in local hands. I guess, tell me in the chat, right, if wherever you are in the country, I'm in Dunedin. I don't feel the need for the Dunedin Council to own all the Dunedin pipes, right? Dunedin, Otago, I'm fine with Otago Southland. But if you're in Hawke's Bay, maybe you're in maybe you're in Palmerston North. That's not Hawke's Bay, but in Palmerston, the first city that came to mind, Manawatu. And are you assured that only Palmerston North has to own Palmerston North, or does it feel local to you to be Manawatu Wellington, which I'm sure is what it is because that's where it is in the country. What do we mean by local ownership? Today's rebrand, he says, from the tired and incompetent Labor government shows they just don't get it. They're the same broken reforms, just will get a new coat of paint. The Greens were also unimpressed, albeit in different ways, with Water Service spokesman Eugenie Sage saying it was a rebrand and significant concerns around the guarantee of public ownership and protection of nature remain. So they're looking at it from the other perspective, probably saying not far enough. She goes on to say increasing the number of water entities would go some way to upholding the right of access to clean, affordable water, but not enough had changed. Te Kura Takapini, which is the Ngaitahu Freshwater Group, co-chairperson Professor Te Māori Tau, said Ngaitahu had supported the 4-entity model, but would work with its local councils to ensure the success of the reform. in the area. Back in the car park in Greytown, South Wairarapa Mayor Martin Colony said he was on board with the changes and felt that since McAnulty had taken charge, he had felt there had been more FaceTime with the minister and local government. The subtext here, of course, is that perhaps under the former local government minister, Ngāi Mahuta, that had not happened. In the previous 4-entity model, I think that there was difficult for councils like ours or Carterton or Masterton to see what we would ever have had any influence. He believed the government had indeed, quote unquote, nailed it. So that's the conversation over this. I really am interested as to why people will now... Well, I know why they'll complain. I know why the groups will complain, because they want to continue this, I guess, right-wing narrative of, co-governance and, unelected people having influence over their water, yada, 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 yada. And it is still interesting that the conversation going on today, right, by anyone opposing it, still has no solutions to their opposing it, right? So there is going to be complaints about Labour actually going, they're useless. There is going to be complaints about co-governance, unelected bodies, but there is yet to be, and there's never been actual conversation around how do we fix the pipes. So don't get distracted. Make sure you stay on track, and if you're having these conversations with people and if you want to know more about it, come back to the what's the fix then. Okay, you don't think this is going to work, fine, what's the fix? How is Gore, insert your own name there, how is Gore going to afford $300 million? How is Hawke's Bay going to fix theirs? How, after those floods, is Auckland going to fix all their stuff, obviously needing more, a refixing of some of the pipes to handle more water with upcoming climate issues? How? That's it. Just how. How are you going to do it? Right. Let's say, and I'll say one more time, although obviously we're not going to do it tonight. The Discord is open. I'm not going to be here for much longer because we've been going an hour now. But if anyone wants to have a chat on any of those things we've talked about tonight, or pick up on anything else, you can jump into Discord. The link is in the description on the YouTube page and on my Twitter feed. And you can cruise over to the waiting room. And if you do that, once I finish doing these texts, I'll grab you. And if you don't, we'll sign off and we'll catch you on Monday at 9 p.m. for another edition. Jotham? Is it Jotham? Jotham Reed. Would you prefer to get your water from the Crusaders or the Hurricanes? Yep, that's a very good point. Guru says, if the National need Māori Party to form the government, then so do Labour, meaning Te Pāti Māori are the Chris makers. Oh, I see what you did then, the Chris makers. 3Waters says, time to fly. I don't think Te Pāti Māori will work with Nats. They have said they won't. I do think that there's an argument to be had for it's better to be on the inside looking out, having ugly bedfellows, than the outside looking in. But yeah, I don't see how Te Pāti Māori, I don't know about National, but I don't see how Te Pāti Māori could possibly work with ACT. I just don't know how that works. And that includes supplying confidence, because basically a supplying confidence means you help them pass everything. So a supplying confidence with Te Pāti Māori and National and ACT means that you're supporting ACT getting anything through that they want to get through. And if that's the case, ACT will have some things they want to get through because they will be basically holding up a right-wing government. Mark says there's no way I guess this is Luxon, could handle ACT and Te Pāti Māori in the same government. Simon says if the Māori Party are challenging in every single seat, said that it's a waste of resources and time take me to target seats in the Māori and electorate. It's a waste of resources and time to target every seat. They should only target the Māori electorates. You're not saying only, but yeah, it's a fair point. And Josie says, I want the dang pipes in the ground. Yes, as opposed to yes, not sure. Okay. Yep, Simple makes a very good point. This is the same. Why aren't they complaining about not owning the hospitals, fire stations or police? Because it's the same argument as 3Waters. 100%. Without question, 100%. Okay, team. I think we're going to wrap up for the night. Pretty good lateral infrastructure now. Pretty good lateral infrastructure now in Christchurch, as you'd expect. Yeah, one of the things that's most frustrating, there's some of those mayors just north of Christchurch, Kaipoi, I think, from memory, that we've had on, not on the show, but we've used some of their commentary before, who are against 3Waters and they're against centralising things, whilst they're sitting on the back of a huge amount of repair to their district, to the pipes and the power and other main focuses, thanks to a centralised government payout and payouts because of the earthquake. So that's always a little bit grating, where someone who has done exactly what they're saying others shouldn't do, and then telling people other people they shouldn't do it. I've told this story before. I've had many examples when I was talking to Dunedin mayors and we were talking about 3Waters, and they were talking about not wanting to pay for why should they have to pay for their neighbours' pipes? Why should Dunedin money, because it was Dunedin mayors, have to go into Hawke's Bay pipes? And then we'd talk about public transport and bus hubs and that kind of stuff. And then they get to that part of the conversation and they'd start talking about getting help from central government for the bus hubs and getting help from central government for the public transport that we needed in Dunedin. And of course, my point was, well, why should Hawke's Bay pay for our public transport? Isn't it literally exactly the same thing? But, logic. All right, team, we're done for tonight. Hey, thanks for joining us. I appreciate the night. Hopefully we got through it okay. No, Chewy, I know your favourite wasn't here tonight, but he'll be back, I'm assuming, on Monday night. Also, no show tomorrow night. We've got, often we do the long form conversation. Because of the short week, I haven't managed to actually organise one, doing other things. So I will be back tomorrow. Sorry, I will be back on Monday at 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hearing News. Lots of stuff going on. It sounds really weird. Lots of stuff going on Twitter at the moment. I'm putting up a bunch of clips from a previous interview that I did with Chantel Baker. I'm putting them up because of the interest in the interview based on the New Zealand Herald article from last week. So follow me on Twitter and you'll see some more of those clips coming out over the next wee while. There's another one today where Chantel said something like, I didn't even write it down because I wrote a tweet for it. She started off by saying that there are groups saying that it's violent speech to disagree with vaccinations. And then from there, in the next 57 seconds, she changed that to, she went from it's violent speech to disagree with vaccinations. And I said, who says that? And it went from that to it's very harmful. And it went from that to disinformation is violence. And it went from that to speech is violence. This is all in 57 seconds. Goalpost, 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 goalpost. And it ended up on being misinformation is inciting violence, which we both agreed on. So, yeah, the fact-checking real-time thing was interesting. And you can get that on my Twitter feed. I believe other groups have started tweeting that around as well. And I'll put out some more clips over the next wee while for you to enjoy. Very good to be with you. I haven't put up our patrons tonight. I believe, actually, that Mr. Anderson, let me have a look. I'm sorry about this because I want to make sure I'm correct. Maybe I'll just put up Patreon. Hang on a sec. I'll just put it up to show you all. Patreon. I believe we had a new patron sign up yesterday. I believe, oh gosh. I'm not logged in. I did a refresh on my computer. I'm not logged into it. Oh, that's why I haven't seen it. Okay, it's not coming up. I believe Mr. Anderson, I think so. Tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Anderson, signed up to be a patron last night. I haven't made the new screen yet. We'll make it for next week. If you like what we do and you want to be involved and you want to help us along, then you can head to patreon.com/Big Hearing News. And in there, you can do all sorts of things. You can be a producer, or you can be a coffee runner, or you can be a just a straight patron, or you can be a super producer or a senior producer. And if you want to do that, we'd love to have you on board. It does help every now and again. I've told you guys the story that in the last month or 6 weeks or so, we had to buy a new graphics card for the computer that we use to do this. That was $700. And so it's lovely to be able to tap into a little bit of help, small bit of help, which is greatly appreciated, to help pay for those sorts of things. Oh, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Anderson. So welcome on board. And your name will be on the thing next week. And it's helpful. It's just helpful. It helps us keep on going, especially when we're not generating any income from here, other than what some people would say that we've been got to by money. That's sort of a desire. I want to be in a position like TYT, where money influences me. Because if money influences you, it has to be quite a bit. I don't want to be in that position, and I don't think it ever will. But we don't have to worry about that right now. All right, team. Great to be with you tonight. Have a really safe weekend. And I will catch you all Monday night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Be safe. Speak to you then. Hooroo.